Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to the Athletic Hockey Show Trade Deadline Live. As you can see here on your screen, it's Ian Mendes, Sean Gentille with you for, next hour and a bit to recap a rather eventful day, 48 hours in the hockey world leading up to the 3 o'clock Eastern time trade deadline. So in lieu of the usual Athletic Hockey Show on a Monday with myself and Haley Salvian, it's this live edition with myself, Sean Gentille. We got a cavalcade guest, maybe even Haley Salvian, coming into the mix. Corey Pronman's going to drop by. I think Peter Bob, maybe some Arthur Staple, Jonas Siegel. So we're going to have a whole cavalcade of guests coming up here, break down the trade deadline. Sean Gentille, my friend, I got to ask you, though, as we kick this off, you did the live blog all day with, it was the two Seans, McIndoe and you. From a humor perspective, did this trade deadline deliver some laughs or what?
Zach Sanford, baby. That was the funny deal of the day. No, I think the Jets brought it for most of the duration there. Are you okay? That's the question. I know. No, I was busy. I thought I was going to be the most flustered person in this live recording or whatever we're doing here. Your day's been, I think, more eventful than mine.
Well, you know what? The thing was, we were supposed to start at 5 Eastern time. It's now almost 6 Eastern time. Ottawa Senators General Manager Pierre Dorion was supposed to speak to us, we thought, around 3:15 on Monday. He ended up speaking to us closer to 5 o'clock. It was like 4:40. So, I came racing into the house after that Pierre Dorion interview. Look, and I got to ask you, we're going to bring Corey Pronman in here in a second. I'm always a big fan of getting outside opinions on the team that I cover, which is the Ottawa Senators. Mm-hmm. And I want to know from your perspective, the Travis Hamonic trade. What goes through your mind when you see Ottawa pick up Travis Hamonic, pay full freight for him, and give up a third-round pick?
When you saw that there was a third-round pick involved, I figured that was also going back to the Vancouver Canucks so that the Senators would take Travis Hamonic. And that's obviously not the case. Yeah, it was wild. I mean, that's the sort of stuff. I mean, my God, dude, you know this better than anybody. That's the sort of stuff that we've come to expect from the Ottawa Senators, like head-scratching stuff, also typically involving weird contracts for D-men. So, yeah, I think in one regard, it was sensible. It also kind of fit the tone of the last few days, which was like crazy prices getting paid for defensemen, like in the wake of the Ben Sherratt deal. But, man, that was a wild one, and it was wild to see Dorian, whether it was on TSN or whether it was with you guys, like try to, justify it, because it was a head scratcher for sure.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I said we got a cavalcade of guests. Why don't we start wheeling them in? Corey Pronman, who of course does just a terrific job covering the prospect side of things. I think we're going to bring Corey Pronman into the mix here. There we go. There we go. We appreciate your patience here as we had a little bit of a false start. Welcome to this live edition of the Athletic Hockey Show Trade Deadline Extravaganza. Corey Pronman, how are you doing on this trade deadline day?
I'm doing very well. It's been a very long last 24, 48 hours, but I've enjoyed it. I think from an NHL perspective, it isn't like the NBA trade deadline, but I still thought we had a lot of action over the last couple of days.
Listen, let me start by asking you, and we saw, Ben Sherratt got traded for a first-round pick. We saw some other first-round picks in play, some second-round picks. Just from a draft capital perspective, were you surprised at the number of picks that changed hands here maybe in the last couple of days?
The one that I thought that was interesting is how many future draft picks were traded. I think you saw a lot of 23 picks, a lot of 24 picks getting traded. It's not something you usually see a lot of in the NHL. I see it in other leagues, other sports, or I see it in the junior leagues. That stuff happens, but in the NHL, it's pretty rare for teams to trade that far into the future, especially for first round picks. I mean, Florida traded their 2024 first round pick in the Claude Giroux deal, and we presume Florida will continue to be good. But there's risk when you do that. You don't know where your team's going to be in a couple of years. For the Flyers, that's a very long time from now if you're rebuilding to even get the player. So that was the one thing that I thought was the most interesting.
Corey, in terms of actual prospects, not just picks, who's the most interesting guy to change hands here?
There was a couple that were interesting. For one, I just mentioned Florida. I think Florida in general just cleared out so many of their main young assets, whether it was the first round picks in 23-24, whether it was Owen Tippett, who was the 10th overall pick in 2017, being traded to Philadelphia. You look at this team now, they are all in. They committed so many of their tradable assets for potential future trade deadlines in this current season. You look at Colorado, who had several good young defensemen in their system. Bowen Byram obviously was playing a little bit in the NHL recently until he got hurt. But then they go trade Justin Barron and Drew Hellison, both excellent, big, mobile, right shot defensemen, as an attempt to try and win, which I admire. But I think those are the two teams that I think you can argue they're the two best teams in the NHL. But they definitely committed themselves with their prospect capital at this trade deadline.
And maybe you could, just following up on that, Jack McBain changed hands too, going to Arizona. Did that surprise you at all?
That one didn't surprise me. Nathan Smith going there surprised me a little bit. I think we knew Jack McBain was looking just for a place to play. I don't think there was a guaranteed roster spot for him in Minnesota, so Arizona made a lot of sense. There was a lot of rumors in the weeks and even months leading up to this trade deadline that Jack McBain might get moved. Nathan Smith, the Winnipeg third rounder who just played at the Olympics and been one of the top players in college hockey. I thought that one was interesting too. Him going also to Arizona, who was really active at the trade deadline and been really active in trades overall this season, as they have a lot of draft picks and they use some of those to get some players in McBain and Smith who can play for them soon, and while still having a lot of capital to play with, even though they didn't trade Jacob Chychrun.
Corey, I wanted to go back to Owen Tippett.
Sure.
He's 23 years old. I think you're a little bit higher on him than some evaluators are. What have you seen from him over the last couple of years that sort of creates that discrepancy? Because he's, ultimately he's a 23-year-old AHL player, right? So what have you seen from him that still makes him worth being the centerpiece of a Claude Giroux deal?
Right. Well, I don't know what evaluators are referencing, but I mean, I think he's got like 13 points, I think he had 18 points in 13 AHL games this season, and Florida's incredibly deep forward group. He played up there for most of the season. Once they got healthy, he went down, and yes, because he's not in the NHL, he's 23. I think it's a reasonable argument that you would like to see that, but I think the circumstances were a little bit different. I think the talent is real significant. He can skate. He's really skilled. He can shoot the puck. He can make plays. The compete level has always kind of been the issue with Owen Tippett. But there's a reason why he was a 10th overall pick in his NHL draft. There is clear top 6 tools there. I would argue even like if everything ever went well for him, he has top line potential. I don't think that's realistic to expect, given how his development has gone over the last 4 or 5 years, where I think he's been rather good as a pro. I mean, when he's been in the American League, I think he's been very successful. In the NHL, I've seen good glimpses from him, even if it's not consistent. But I think he's going to help the Flyers. I think, the fact that he's a wing, not a premium position, I think is the one aspect of that trade that hurts a little bit. You didn't get a center, you didn't get a defenseman in that trade. It's a top 6 winger who are valuable, but not extremely valuable, typically in the trade market. But I do think Tippett's going to help the Flyers to go with that first round pick that they got. But it's fair to say when you trade a star center, even if it's a rental center, the return was less than you expect, but Giroux held all the cards, and that's what happened.
And I wouldn't mind also picking your brain. I'm always, when you see a trade for an NHL-ready player now, like Arturi Lehkonen goes to Colorado, in exchange for prospects, and in this case, Justin Barron and a second-round pick, should Montreal fans be excited about getting Barron?
Yeah, I think so. I think Barron's an excellent prospect. I mean, he's 6'2", and a half, excellent skater. So, I mean, the athletic tools are off the charts, always have been with Barron. I mean, he was a guy who, coming into his draft year, he went in the 20s, partly because he had a blood clot issue that season. His performance wasn't all that good, but he's always been an extremely well thought of prospect. Not great offense, probably more secondary offense in the NHL, but I do think there is some offense there as a pro to go with the size, the excellent skating ability. I mean, that's a guy who, there's no guarantees, but I think he's got a fairly decent chance to become a second pair defenseman, top 4 defenseman in the National Hockey League, who can maybe be a second power play guy, maybe not on a top team, but I think he's an excellent prospect. And when you didn't see a lot of those guys switch hands, but that's because Lehkonen has control beyond this season. So once I kind of heard that he was going to Colorado, my thoughts went to Barron or potentially a future first round pick as the assets that made sense there.
Was there a prospect that changed hands that surprised you? Like, was there a guy who you saw you were like, oh, wasn't expecting him to move today?
No, not really. I mean, I think you kind of know going into the trade deadline. You look at the buyers, you look at where who their top guys are, who the players that are being coveted by other teams. Like I think I said before, I didn't really know that Nathan Smith wasn't going to sign with Winnipeg. I think that was more of a recent development. But otherwise, I think everybody who moved was mostly the way I expected. But going back to Barron, the one thing I wasn't sure, I kind of knew Drew Helleson was kind of going to move. I mean, he was a chip that was being discussed in NHL circles for a while, and Colorado was a contending team. You knew they were going to move a second round pick who had developed quite well, and it was garnering interest. But whether they were going to move Barron was one I was interested by. Because after now that they've moved both of those guys, they don't really have much left in their farm system now that Alex Newhook and Bowen Byram are on the NHL team. They got some other guys that are somewhat intriguing, but those were their two top prospects outside the NHL. And but I understand why they did it. I mean, that they're the Stanley Cup favorite. If you find a guy who you think can really help your team for this and a future playoff run, I think it's definitely worth it.
Well, listen, Corey, before we let you go, trade deadline is come and gone. Next thing on the agenda, especially for prospect junkies like you, it's the top prospects game coming your way on Wednesday. I'm just curious, can you give our listeners and viewers a name of one guy that, hey, maybe keep your eye on this guy if they're happening to watch the top prospects game on Wednesday?
Yeah, sure. I'm actually in the Guelph-Kitchener area right now, prepare for the CHL top prospects game. The Canadian Hockey League, there's going to be a couple of guys who will be picked really high. Obviously, everyone knows Shane Wright, potential first overall pick. The Winnipeg Ice duo of Matthew Savoy, Connor Geekie are very well highly thought of as well. And if you want one other name who may not be consensus, keep an eye on Pavel Mentnikov, the defenseman for the Saginaw Spirit. He's a guy who's garnering a lot of interest in the National Hockey League, and in a draft where there doesn't seem to be exceptional depth at the defense position, he's a guy I think has a very good chance to go top 15.
All right. Well, listen, terrific. We look forward to your coverage of the top prospects game, the showcase coming up on Wednesday. Appreciate you dropping by and kind of weighing in on some of the prospects and draft picks that moved here at the deadline. Corey, as always, thanks for this.
Thank you.
All right, there goes Corey Prom. Before we bring Jonas Siegel on here, Sean, I got to read a couple of comments that have come in on the side of the screen here. By all means, jump in with the comments.
Ready for it. Let's go.
It's a live show, so we like this. Kyle Baxter has written in, wow, Ian looks like that. I thought he'd look a lot more like a dorky dad based on the podcast.
That's a compliment.
Is it?
Is it? Wait, actually, I'm not sure if it is.
I think it's a backhanded compliment. Like nobody could be
like that face. That face does not make the commensurate amount of puns that you do on the
right
on the podcast, basically.
Or nobody could be as ugly as I imagined you to be based on your podcast personality.
That's
cool. And then Tim Lynch writes in, if they ever did a reboot of Unsolved Mysteries with Ian as the host, I'd watch the hell out of it. I don't even know what that is, but I'm in.
First off, buddy, I got some bad news. They did do a reboot of Unsolved Mysteries, and you are not the host of it. So you got to find a new gig.
They did. Hey, listen, the people want Jonas Siegel. So let's bring him in. The Toronto Maple Leafs, a lot of eyes on them heading into this deadline. There he is.
Hey, buddy.
It's Jonas Siegel. Jonas Siegel. How are you doing, buddy?
Muted.
Oh, he hasn't unmuted himself. There we go. Hold on. Do we have him? No. A whole lot of nothing. Rather fitting for the guy covering Toronto at the trade deadline, right? So there we go. Okay. Let's see. Do we got him now? Jonas Siegel. Nope. I could read the lips.
That could be a fun segment, actually. Jonas speaks.
Yeah.
And we have to actually guess what he's saying about the Maple Leafs based on the lip ratings.
I think he said Jack Campbell. No, I don't. Anyway, hey, I got to ask you. Look, we do have some text coming in here. Vincent has written in. Hey guys, what is the single worst trade that was made this deadline? So again, that one comes in from Vincent, and Vincent wants to know what's the worst singular trade that's been made? I know a lot of people would say Travis Hamonic.
It's the most
Toronto, I don't know.
inexplicable one, right? Like
I don't know what you think.
If you're giving up an asset to acquire a player who was on waivers a few months ago, when you're a go nowhere team for the rest of the season, I get the logic from Pierre Dorian. He said he ran the assessment. He's better than what they could have gotten on the open market in the summer. Understandable, but my God, that was baffling. I'm trying to remember what the other rough ones were, because it's been such a slow burn, right? Where we've gotten drips and drabs of other deals in the run up to today. But Hamonic definitely sticks out.
I'll tell you, Nick has written in. Nick says Ricard Raquel was a bad move, and I'm curious what you think of this, because obviously the team that you, for a long time, that was your beat, right? You were a Penguins guy, and I still think a lot of us look at you and think of you as the guy who follows the Penguins and knows them very intimately. So Ricard Raquel, thumbs up, thumbs down.
I get a thumbs up. I mean, that's the cost of doing business, right? It's a whatever conditional second round pick. It's Kelly Klang, who's a good goaltending prospect. It's Zach Aston Reese. It's Dominic Simone, who are, roster pieces to make the money work. Aston Reese more of a loss than Simone for sure. Aston Reese's defensive impact numbers were great, but he couldn't score. So be it. You got to send out money to add money, right? I think the single biggest thing that Jim Rutherford always understood when he was here was that having Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang was a gift, and you sell out every year because you never know when you're going to get that kind of collection of talent together again. And that makes for tough decisions, and it makes for mistakes, and it makes for a brutal prospect pool. We see that now, right? Where it seems like for the last 3 years, every trade involving the Penguins has been like, oh, can they get him for Sam Poulin? Can they get him for Nathan Legare? There's the same names that keep kicking around because that's how barren the prospect pool is. Understood. That's the cost of doing business when you respect the gift. And I think that's what Jim Rutherford always did. And I think that's what we saw with Ron Hextall today. You look at what happened in the Eastern Conference, whether it was the Rangers, whether it was the Panthers, on and on down the list. They needed to do something, especially because they had a glaring hole on Evgeny Malkin's wing. They're taking Brian Rust off of Sidney Crosby's wing, off the first line. That would have been shocking stuff, a couple months ago, but that speaks to the issues that they had on that line, right? So Raquel fits in there. The price was gigantic. But this is what it means to run an organization that has Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang on it. Like, they're still capable of winning, and it made all the sense in the world to do it. Yes, the price tag was high. Good work by the Ducks. I think we deserved it. We should give a lot of credit to Pat Verbeek, because even aside from this deal, he brought in a haul, right? You look at everything, whatever he got for Josh Manson, on and on. The list goes on. Great work by Pat Verbeek, but this is what it means to be the GM of the Pittsburgh Penguins when Sidney Crosby plays for them. And Ron Hextall understands it, and I think that was proof today.
All right, well, I'll tell you what. Let's try take two, shall we, with Jonas Siegel. I think he's on standby. Do we have him now?
Hello.
There we go.
Yes.
All righty.
The first win of the day, baby. Let's go.
There we go. Jonas Siegel, a busy man, of course, who covers the Toronto Maple Leafs as part of our terrific crew that covers Toronto. Never a shortage of things to talk about, but let's start with the idea. A lot of us thought, Jonas, that Kyle Dubas needed to go out and get a goaltender. So explain to us the rationale. You listened, I'm sure, to Dubas's availability this evening. Explain to us why Toronto didn't make a move for a goalie.
Well, I think they basically looked around at everything that was out there and came to the conclusion that nothing outside of Marc-Andre Fleury was definitively better and or worth the price. So you could go for a sideways option, and we looked at every different goaltender in Toronto that they could potentially acquire, and it's are these guys that much better than what they have? And I think they basically decided no, not necessarily, and not worth paying for. And then there's trying to fit it under the cap. So there are all these working parts for them, and they basically just came around to the conclusion that they have to hope, that Jack Campbell finds his game again. That's kind of their only choice. And that's the conclusion I came to a few weeks ago. And then it was watching that outdoor game. It was they can't possibly just roll the dice with this, can they? But it's a salary cap, and there's just not that many guys out there, and this is kind of where they're at.
Was Satella getting claimed on waivers something they anticipated, or was that just did that come out of left field? Were they ready for that?
I mean, they're ready for that, but like if you're depending on Harry Sateri to win you anything, you're probably pooched. And that's kind of like we in Toronto, I'm sure you guys know, we sort of obsess about like little tiny details. But the bigger issue is that, there just wasn't a guy out there outside of Marc-Andre Fleury. And obviously they talked to Chicago about Marc-Andre Fleury, didn't like the price. And if they get Marc-Andre Fleury, they probably can't get Mark Giordano. So like there's a lot of like moving parts in the air for them, unless they decided to sit Jake Muzzin for the rest of the season, which they weren't prepared to do. And I'm not even sure. Actually, I'm not sure. It would not have made sense for them to sit Jake Muzzin the rest of the year. So that's kind of a non-starter. So yeah, that's kind of where they're at.
You mentioned Jake Muzzin. I'm curious, Jonas, about the defense pairings now that Mark Giordano is going to be in the mix. So take us through, like in an ideal world, game one of the Stanley Cup playoffs for Toronto, if everybody's healthy, the 6 defensemen, who are they and what do they look like?
Oh man, Ian, I'm obsessed with this stuff. Like I could just like play on these combinations, like who plays with who and like what it looks like. I don't know. And I don't think they know at this point. Like part of it is Muzzin's not back yet. And they just lost Rasmus Sandin to a knee injury. And it's not really clear how long he'll be out. It kind of feels like he could be out the rest of the regular season. When Muzzin's back, they have like some questions. Do they want to put Mark Giordano back with TJ Brody? Obviously, those guys have like as extensive a history as you could possibly have all those years in Calgary. Do they want to play Mark Giordano with someone else? Do they want to play him with Justin Hall? Do they want to put TJ Brody back with Morgan Riley? I think what's good for them now is they have options. Like they can go in a lot of different directions. And the way I look at it is like on every pair, they can kind of have a guy that you're comfortable being out there, like one trustworthy guy, at least on each pair. Like you can have Riley on the ice at all times or Muzzin or Giordano, and then there's Brody. And so suddenly you look at their defense and like there's not as many guys that you think in a playoff series, like I don't really know if that guy, I trust that guy being out there. So I think they're at a better spot than they were. But like Muzzin remains a really big question mark. Like there's coming back from a concussion, multiple concussions. And then it's like, is he going to be better than he was before he got hurt? And I don't know. He's 33 and he's had a lot of injuries.
Is Colin Blackwell going to last in the second line? And how long is it going to work? Like, is that just like a dead day one experiment? What's going on?
So he didn't practice today. Neither did Giordano. So we'll see where he ends up slotting in. Like it kind of sounds like that's in the cards. Like Sheldon Keefe brought up today, the fact that he scored at a 20-goal pace the last couple of years. And he and Kyle Dubas like both brought up the fact that he's not just an energy guy. He's got some skill to his game. And they've had this like gaping problem on the left wing of their second line for basically a couple months now. They've tried everyone. Nothing is really stuck. And honestly, like I've obsessed about that spot a lot, but really like they just need William Nylander and John Tavares to play better than they have. Like those are two of their highest paid players. They're two of their best players. I mean, we can point at that third wheel all we like, but if those two guys aren't playing at their height or maximum level, it doesn't really matter.
I'll tell you what, before we let you go here, Jonas, something we do on the Monday edition of the Athletic Hockey Show, we play a little game called Multiple Choice Madness. I got a multiple choice question to ask you to wrap it up, okay? We're going to fast forward to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Which member of the Toronto Maple Leafs organization, Jonas, is sitting on the hottest seat on night one of the Stanley Cup playoffs? Is it Kyle Dubas, Sheldon Keefe, Mitch Marner, John Tavares, or Jack Campbell? Who's got the hottest seat? Dubas, Keefe, Marner, Tavares, Campbell.
I love games, so I will play this game all day. I think like you could go with any of those guys, and I don't think any of those answers are wrong, but it has to be Campbell. I mean, with what's gone on this year, with the pressure that he's put on himself, the highs he's had this year, like we were at one point in like November talking about this guy for the Vezina, the U.S. Olympic team. And it's like they're I mean, this is hockey. Like if your goalie doesn't play well, you're kind of like pooched. So I'll go with Campbell, but I don't think any of those answers are wrong.
I got to start incorporating pooch into my daily vocabulary. We heard it twice.
It's weird. I don't actually use the word that much.
No,
it must be my brain is mushy, and that's the word that just keeps coming to mind.
Yeah, because you're trying not to swear because you've been up for 14 hours or however long it's been.
Terrific stuff. Hey, Jonas, listen, thanks for dropping by the live show. We always appreciate that, your contributions here, and certainly we look forward to reading all about the Maple Leafs on deadline day in the Athletic. Thanks for this, and have a great night.
Thanks, guys.
All right, there goes Jonas Siegel. I think I'm just some moving parts here. I think we're going to go to Arthur Staple, if I'm not mistaken here. Yeah, we're going to go to Arthur Staple. Look at this. Boom, just like that.
Arthur!
We bring him in. He is our senior New York hockey writer, and never a dull moment in New York. And certainly I know you've got to run to a press conference here that you got to get to shortly. So
eventually, yeah.
Okay, but let's shoehorn this in. Let's look at the Rangers. There's people who think that they're a Stanley Cup contender. There's some people who think they're a pretender. I want to know, after the deadline, how should we view the New York Rangers?
Better than before. I'd have to say, if the one flaw in their game, or one of the major flaws, was just not having enough forward depth, where you saw guys like Dryden Hunt and Julian Gauthier, who are basically glorified AHLers, getting pretty regular minutes and sometimes in the top six. The moves that they made over the last few days, starting with Frank Vatrano coming in from Florida for a 4th-round pick, and then today, Andrew Kopp, a big addition from Winnipeg, and Tyler Mott, kind of a smaller addition, but certainly a guy who's better than what they've got. So 3 forwards that can go right into their lineup, and there's not a lot of teams that are headed to the playoffs that could say, hey, let's pick up 3 regular NHLers and put them right in our lineup. The Rangers can, and then Justin Braun for maybe a little insurance on D, because their defense has been a little shaky. So it seems like a lot to add for a team that's top 10 in the league, but they all seem to fit, and it seems to make a lot of sense that they didn't give up any of their prime prospects, and maybe not even a 1st-round pick, depending on what happens.
Where does Kopp fit in? Is he a third center, or is he like a center? Is he like a second line right winger? Like, what's the ideal fit for him for them?
You could list off a few more spots. I think he'd still just keep going. He could play top line right wing with Chris Kreider and Mika Zibanejad tomorrow night in Jersey, and it wouldn't look that strange. This is a guy that, I think when they were first investigating JT Miller, and that was going on for a while, it made a lot of sense, because here's a guy who can play center, he can play wing, power play, do some penalty kill, win some faceoffs. They need guys that can do a lot, and Kopp is maybe like a B plus version of JT Miller. Obviously, he's a pending UFA, and they have some serious cap issues coming this offseason. But he's certainly a guy that, if he does what they hope he can do down the stretch and in the playoffs, whether it's 3rd-line center, 3rd-line wing alongside Philip Hedl, 2nd-line wing with Ryan Strome, maybe if you need him, or 4th-line guy to just go out and tough it out, play some PK. If he can do all that and he fits in well, he's a guy you could see them trying to keep around. I know they have some issues, and they got to sign Ryan Strome, and they're going to need a number 2 center for the long term, but Kopp is a guy that gives you a lot of options in the short term and a lot of options in the long term. That's why it's such a good addition.
Arthur, I think a lot of people would look at Igor Shesterkin and say, not only is he a legitimate Vezina Trophy candidate, but maybe a potential Hart Trophy candidate too, and that has made Alexander Georgiev somewhat expendable. And I'm curious, was his name ever really in play for something that happened at the deadline, or do the Rangers just feel like, you know what, we might need 2 goalies here, let's revisit this in the summertime?
I'm sure they would have traded him if there was some sort of market for him. And from what I'd heard, back in December, they had a deal in place with Arizona, and it wasn't for much of a return. It was for a very low-level goalie prospect from the Coyotes. And that got scuttled because Shesterkin got hurt. And so then Georgiev played for a few weeks. He was okay, went back to his number 2 goalie spot. And, he's not the most positive, hasn't had the most positive attitude. It's tough to be a backup in this league when you think you should be a number 1. He's still a young guy. So the writing was on the wall for him to be out of here in the summer. I'm sure he wanted to be out of here before then, but really the way that he's played outside of last night, where he stood on his head and had one of the best goalie performances of the season when he shut out Carolina, there really just wasn't enough that he showed that any team that needs a goalie going forward here would say, we're going to commit an asset for this guy. And really, if you're not going to get anything back for him, why give him up? Because like you said, you may need someone. If they lose Shesterkin, they're screwed. So that's not even a question. But there's 19 games left. There's a few back-to-backs. You want to give this Shesterkin a break before you get to the playoffs. So Georgiev is stuck. The Rangers are stuck with him, and they'll part ways in the summer for nothing in all likelihood. So, probably they would have hoped that they would have gotten something for him, but just didn't work out.
I figured he punched his ticket with that game last night. He was unbelievable. I thought that was going to be the most fortuitously timed game by a backup goalie in like NHL history where he was going to net them something. Vegas was going to lose their mind and overpay for him. That clearly wasn't the case.
Maybe in like 1988, if there was nothing you could watch on TV where you got a scout with like a phone, like a dial-up phone in the press box, and he calls his GM and says, "We got to get this guy." Maybe, but not now.
Hey, listen, before we let you go here, because like I said, I know you got something to cover here in a couple of minutes. As you look ahead to the playoffs, and right now, boy, I feel like the Atlantic and the Metro divisions are so tough. If you had to look at the ideal first-round opponent for the New York Rangers, who would it be?
Probably Pittsburgh. I think that's a weird one to say because the Rangers and Penguins, have had some history. Penguins have gotten the better of them. Rangers have gotten the better of the Penguins sometimes. And it's been a while, obviously, since the Rangers have been in the playoffs, so it's hard to gauge. But, I've covered the Islanders the last few years, and the Islanders have kind of made the Penguins look not old and slow, but kind of old and out of it. And certainly their goaltending has been suspect. The Penguins stood pat in goal. They're going to go with Tristan Jarry, who's having a great year, but had a terrible playoff last spring. And the Rangers have the best goalie in the league. So I think as far as playoff matchups go, and especially psyche going into a playoff, the Rangers would have a pretty big edge going in against Pittsburgh, even with Crosby, with Malkin, with Letang. It's easy to forget that those guys really haven't won a playoff round in a few years. So I think Sean remembers, but not many other.
I do have a question. Are you rooting for Rangers Penguins to happen so you have to come to town and hang out? Because I'm down. That's good. We need that to happen.
I wasn't going to bring it up, but that's really my ulterior motive here. So since I can't go to Ottawa, it's the next best thing.
There we go. Love it. Hey, Steve, thanks for doing this, and we look forward to reading all about what the Rangers did today in the Athletic here tomorrow. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks, guys. See you.
All right. There goes Arthur Staple. We've got Bill Lindsay on deck. We've got Peter Baugh as the Avalanche and the Panthers have done some things here. But before we get to them, Sean, we're going to take a little break. We'll be right back. It's a live edition of the Athletic Hockey Show Trade Deadline. We'll get right back to the Athletic Hockey Show in a second. But first, want to give a little platform here for our partners at Athletic Greens. Now, I can tell you this. This is a pretty cool product, Athletic Greens. And for me, I'm not one of these coffee drinkers. If you listen to the podcast, look, Ian doesn't drink coffee. It's one of those things where you're still probably looking to get a little bit of energy in the morning, right? That's what Athletic Greens is all about. And you can get rid, and if you're taking a bunch of, pills and vitamins in the morning, Athletic Greens, you can get rid of that. All of it. Make room in your cabinet. Athletic Greens is a all-in-one solution that actually tastes good. And you're really going to enjoy getting your daily vitamins. And you know what? I got to tell you this. It tastes really good. You're going to put it in your glass. You're going to put one little pouch in your glass of water. You're going to stir it up. And, I've had this for several mornings here. And it tastes good. It's really subtle. It's like a subtle, fruity, tropical flavor, if that's the best way to describe it. And you're getting 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, all of that to help start your day right, okay? And this special blend of ingredients, it supports your gut health, your nervous system, your energy, recovery, focus, all of those things. Like I said, if you're looking for a little boost and you're not a caffeine person in the morning, I'd say give it a shot. And if you're trying to cut down on sugar, you're kind of embracing keto, paleo, one of those things, this is great because it's got less than 1 gram of sugar. But like I said, it somehow has that really good taste. And you know what? If you're investing in your health, it's cheaper than your coffee or your cold brew habit. It's going to cost you less than $3 a day. And right now, time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially as we're in the height of this flu and cold season, right? It's just 1 scoop in a cup of your water every day. That's it. You don't have to take a bunch of different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And so to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you've got to do is visit athleticgreens.com/hockeyshow. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/hockeyshow to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. We'll get right back to the podcast in a second, but first, shaving pubic hair tends to be a taboo topic that people avoid these days, but Meridian is breaking the stigma and empowering guys to take better care of their bodies. It's a high-quality trimmer, and it was designed specifically for sensitive areas, so you can shave below the belt. You know, I think men and women can agree it sometimes is a little scary when you're taking care of your goods down there. And we've all heard those nightmare stories with cuts happening in the worst possible places in your body. But I can tell you this, with Meridian, that worry is out the window. It helps you cut right through the coarse and curly hair without the nicks and cuts, even in the most sensitive areas. Now, as I mentioned, Meridian trimmer designed for the sensitive areas below your belt, and you can even use it anywhere else. You got chest hair, back hair that you want to remove. It's all good to remove that. The trimmer, it's got a 6,000 RPM motor and a flexible ceramic blade. It's got the anti-nick shaving guard to prevent the nicks and cuts, and it's waterproof, so you can take it right into the shower with you. And guess what? Meridian is going to send you a replacement blade so you can always have a fresh trim. And listeners here with the Athletic Hockey Show, you can get a free pair of boxer briefs on your next order with the coupon code NHL Show. So go to meridiangrooming.com today to get a premium below the belt trimmer. That's Meridian, MERIDIAN, grooming.com. Use that code NHL Show for a free pair of boxer briefs with your purchase. It's also available at Walmart, Bed Bath & Beyond, and CVS. Here we go. We're back at it. It's Ian Mendes, Sean Gentille with you live here. The Athletic Hockey Show trade deadline extravaganza. We've got Bill Lindsay, Peter Baugh coming up here in a second. But real quick, Sean, the comment section, we do invite our listeners and viewers. So actually, this is, I keep forgetting, we're actually on camera here. Viewers, drop into the comment section if you got questions for us. Your Jawbreaker shirt, man, blowing it up. See, now, so what's the backstory here?
It's a band that I think anybody who's paid attention to me on the internet for any portion of the last 10 years is probably not surprised to hear that I like. Yeah. Shout out to James Chang. He knows what's up. It is on
There
brand.
you go.
That's right.
See, I thought it was like you were. I see. If I'm a big fan of Gobstoppers, the Willy Wonka
That too.
Gobstoppers. I should have.
Hold on a second. Any of the Willy Wonka candy family, I'm down with. More of a nerds guy than the Gobstoppers,
yeah.
but that's okay.
Yeah.
Laffy Taffy, anything at all, really.
Yeah, I could go on. I'm sure Bill Lindsay's in the waiting room. He's like, "What? I did not agree to come on to talk about Willy Wonka stuff." But
buyer
agree
beware, my friend.
To talk about the Florida Panthers. Do we have Bill Lindsay all set? Look at this. Boom. Look,
There he is.
We're talking about Willy Wonka. Guy rolls in with a Mickey Mouse shirt. I think we're good to go.
I got Mickey today.
Love it, man.
Love it. Hey, listen, Bill, thanks for doing this. And this is exciting because I think for a lot of fans, the Florida Panthers are an exciting team. If your favorite team is out of the playoffs, I think a lot of people are kind of pulling on or jumping on the Panthers bandwagon. Can you give our viewers a sense of the excitement level here after they pick up Ben Sherrod, after they pick up Claude Giroux? Like, they've pushed all their chips in the middle of the table, and there must be a lot of excitement in South Florida right now.
Through the roof. We haven't seen it in a long time. We had the really good year last year, finally able to back it up with another good season this year. The core that they built around Barkov, Huberdeau, and Ekblad. Bill Zito's made some really good changes to this hockey team, and he had some salary cap flexibility this year going into the trade deadline. Ownership group gave the green light and said, go ahead, let's do this. Let's go and see what we can do with it. You only get so many chances to win the Stanley Cup. We needed a veteran defenseman, someone that preferably shot left-handed. Ben Sherrod fits that bill. He's big, sturdy, can eat up minutes. So we're glad to have him on our team. That was priority number one, in my opinion, that you got some experience back on the blue line. So they addressed that immediately. And then you had some room left over if you wanted to make the splash for Claude Giroux. We had a hole in our top six that needed to be filled. Someone to play along Barkov, and Claude Giroux comes in and he checks off a lot of boxes. We're bad in the face-off circle. We're 29th in the NHL in the face-off circle. Giroux is one of the best, if not the best. Bergeron, but Giroux's over 60% this year, which is a real value to this team. And he can kill penalties, play on the power play. We got top 9 forwards that are legit. Our fourth line will grind it out. They can punch in the face. We'll punch right back. It's that kind of scenario. They can play it fast. Whatever kind of, if you want to grind it out, knock it up. This Panther team has all the abilities and traits to do everything that you want to do to be a Stanley Cup champion. The one question mark, Sergei Bobrovsky, can he make the saves when it matters most? He's been able to do it during the regular season. Can he do it in the playoffs? And it's pretty much the same for this whole Panther team. Can they answer the bell when the playoffs come upon us?
We've seen Alexander Barkov click with a lot of players who are a lot worse than Claude Giroux, right? So that, to me, as someone who really enjoys watching the Panthers, like I'm just, my mind's racing at the thought of those guys consistently playing together, right? It should be a lot of fun. But as someone who's, watched so much Barkov over the years, you got to be your mind's got to be, churning at the thought of those two guys playing together, because they seem like they're a perfect fit.
Yeah, just for the playmaking ability of both those guys and Barkov to play both ends of the rink. So to come in there and you have that top line, Huberdeau, Declare, Bennett, get Verhaeghe. Verhaeghe's underrated, the stuff that he's able to do with his speed. And all of a sudden you get Barkov and Giroux on a line. Those guys, this Panther team can play with pace. It plays with speed. They play the four lines. They're top guys. They preferably get them around 18 minutes. Get that fourth line around 12 minutes and just go and just try and blitz you shift after shift. And basic philosophy is try and keep up with us for 3 periods. See if you can do it. See if you can hang with us. And most teams around the NHL can't hang with the Panthers for 3 periods when they're playing their best hockey. It's simply not possible. They are that much better than everyone else across the board. And this was before the Giroux trade. So having Giroux with Barkov, that is just, you can't. It is exciting to get this group and this band together. To see Barkov's going to love it, Giroux's going to love it. Down in South Florida, there's a buzz like there's never been before around this hockey team. Most talented team we've ever iced in the history of the franchise. So we'll see what happens when playoffs roll around.
What do you think it means to the fan base too? Like, Claude Giroux handpicked Florida, right? Obviously, it sounded like some other teams, Colorado might have been interested, but he basically went to the Flyers and said, it's Florida or nothing. And I'm wondering, for a franchise that hasn't won a playoff round, I mean, really, since you were there as an active player, what does that mean to get that type of seal of approval that he's thinking he's only picking Florida because he thinks that's his best chance at winning a Stanley Cup?
Means a lot. For a veteran player that hasn't won a cup, it means a lot for Giroux to come in here into this locker room and have belief. And the big product that you see on the ice for the Florida Panthers is a lot what's happening off the ice with the chemistry that's been built in the dressing room, bringing Patrick Hornquist, bringing Joe Thornton in. These guys play for one another. They play for the guy beside them. And there's so much internal competition for ice time. They're really afraid to let the guy down beside them. So it's a group that's really developed a friendship off the ice and a real competitive spirit off the ice. So when you can bring someone in, Claude Giroux, that has that kind of leadership abilities, has been a captain on a team for a long, long time, that really helps this club in that dressing room that's so strong. So I believe he's coming into a situation that he knows has got a really strong core nucleus, a dressing room that kind of fits his bill as far as guys that want to get something together, that they want to go to Joe Thornton hasn't won a Stanley Cup either. And he's another guy that came in the offseason and then wanted to go to the Panthers because he believed that they had a shot at winning a Stanley Cup. So to have someone, Claude Giroux, pick us and believe in our team, that speaks volumes of where we've come. You mentioned 96, the last time we've won a playoff series. It speaks volumes of what they've been able to do the last couple of years. This franchise has been begging for some consistency. All these young, good players, and they've been begging for consistency. Playoffs last year, can you back it up and get in? So now the next evolution for this team is to win a playoff round and chase that cup.
Is there concern on your part? I mean, there's worse. Those are champagne problems when you're talking about incorporating Claude Giroux into a lineup, right? Ben Sherratt, whatever, like Robert Haig. These are fine players. Is there concern on your part in terms of incorporating those 3 guys in the fly into a team that's been pretty unbelievable so far already?
Not really, because you look at the top 6, we've been a bunch of players in that top 6. We've had Vetrano in there. We've had Tippett in there. We've had Maxime Mammon in that top 6. Reinhardt's been up there, but he's better suited with Lundell and Marchment on that third line. That third line's really clicked with Reinhardt down there. So we've had an evolution of guys in that top 6 forward role. So Claude Giroux comes in. We need a piece there. So Claude Giroux comes in. Yeah, it fits in because there's already been a surplus of players that have played in that position. So they've been able to move those players out, put Drew in. It's a natural fit. Brandon Montour on the blue line, he's had to play with Yolevi, Nudavara, Lindbaum. You just keep going down the list. He's had to play with all kinds of different pairings. I'm not sure if he's going to play with Montour at the start, but Montour's had to play with a bunch of different guys. And if you can get the six intact, ideally down the stretch, you'd like to have Montour, or whoever Montour's going to play with, have some consistency with him for the last 20 games going into the playoffs. So there's another piece that was missing. They've been having experiment after experiment in those roles. And then for the extra guys that have played a lot that are still here, for the Maxine Mammons that are on board, Lindbaum that we signed, we've had guys that have played a lot and played in those roles up and down the lineup. So if there are injuries, you can plug and place holes. But there were natural fits for both Giroux and Sherratt in this lineup.
And a final one for you is you talk about Brandon Montour maybe trying to find the proper D partner, and Sherratt coming in. How much concern is there about Aaron Ekblad, who is out kind of, I guess they're saying week to week, or could be indefinitely? How much concern is there, Bill, about Aaron Ekblad, who arguably should be in the Norris conversation every season right now? Yeah, there's definitely a huge concern because of what happened last year. He wasn't available in that first round. He had that really catastrophic leg injury that he rehabbed really hard just to get ready for this season. And he wasn't available for Tampa Bay last year in the first round. So he has that injury. And all you could think about when I was watching it, going back to last year, and like, is this happening again? So they came out and said there's no structural damage, but it does seem that maybe he's going to be placed on long-term IR. And the hope is to get him back available, hopefully when the playoffs start. But that's harkening back to last year. That is something the Panther fans or no one wants to see, is Aaron Ekblad not available for that first round playoff series. So hopefully he recovers quickly and gets back. But it doesn't seem that it's not the case what it was last year, where it was the broken leg and something that you knew he wasn't going to be back in the playoffs. It looks like there is a chance for him to be back. Well, terrific stuff. Bill Lindsay, Florida Panthers radio analyst, NHL Network studio analyst. Thanks for dropping by this live edition of the Athletic Hockey Show Trade Deadline. And listen, we're hoping, fingers crossed, I think if you don't have a horse in the race, how can you not cheer for the Florida Panthers? So I think a lot of us are hoping they go really far. But I appreciate you dropping by and spending a few minutes with us. Yeah, thanks, guys. Enjoy the show and enjoy the stretch run. The playoffs, always great time of year. So enjoy it. Thank you very much. All right, thank you. There goes Bill Lindsay. Like I said, Panthers radio analyst, NHL Network studio analyst. We're going to take a break. But before we do, got some more comments to read from the inbox. We love these. And you know what? I like this one from Chris, who writes in, loving the live podcast energy. It'd be neat to get another one of these as a playoff preview. So, probably 6 weeks from now, maybe we do this. We bring Brown in. Right? Are we that close already? It's 6 weeks. Isn't it? Is it less? I feel like it's less. Yeah, it's about 6 weeks. First week of May, right? I like this. I like this from Anthony. Ian has one of those generic faces that can match any face. It has a tone that makes you want to listen and believe in his message. Wait, how do I have a generic face? No, it's a generic voice. You have a generic voice. You do not have a generic face. I was going to say, I don't know that. I have a generic face. I don't know. Is there such thing as a generic face? I don't think so. Oh yeah, of course. Look, come on. I'm like a creative player. I'm like bearded white guy number 3 on Madden or something. I appreciate that, Anthony, because I'll tell you what, I've worked 20 years in broadcasting, mostly in television, a little bit in radio. To be told that your voice is generic is about the highest compliment possible. I don't know if you can say a nicer thing to me other than you have a generic voice. I love it. Congratulations on your non-regional diction, Ian Mendes. You're doing a wonderful job. I love it. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Chris, everybody that's tuning in. Like I said, we're going to take one more break. We're going to come back. And, before we get to Peter Baugh's take on the Avs and what they did, I think we need to drill down a little bit on some of his hot food takes that have kind of been creeping into his timeline. Right? I missed this. He's been a little iffy with some food takes lately. And anyway, we'll talk to him about that and then everything that the Avalanche did. We'll get right back to it again. You're watching a live edition of the Athletic Hockey Show Trade Deadline Special. We'll get right back to our podcast in a second. But first, I want to talk to you about how tough it is to find good food and that it's like a fast pre-cooked meal. And look, we're all jammed for time, right? Especially, right now for me, it's right in the heart of the NHL season. My kids are back at school. They got activities. My wife's working full time. It's really hard, right? It's really hard to find those meals that if you only have a few minutes to prepare them, that they don't taste frozen or tasteless or like super, salty or processed. Well, I can tell you this. We want to introduce you to Freshly because food that's fast doesn't have to be fast food. Freshly offers quality meals without all the hard work. Their meals are designed by nutritionists, they're cooked by chefs, and then they're delivered right to your door fresh. Other meal deliveries need to be prepped and cooked, but Freshly, it's ready to go in about 3 minutes. So get delicious, chef-made, nutrient-packed meals delivered straight to your door. No cooking required. And it's fresh, never frozen, ready to heat, and you eat it in about 3 or 4 minutes. And you know what? Use the Freshly website or the app to find meals that fit your lifestyle with your plans. Maybe you've got dietary restrictions, preferences, family size, all those things. You're going to get to choose from about 50 nutritionist design entrees, okay? So I'm talking to some delicious things like steak peppercorn and some great side dishes like masterful mac and cheese. And they've got a brand new line of plant-based meals too. So skip the groceries, shopping, skip the dirty dishes. Your meals arrive cooked and fresh, ready every week. And there's a new rotation of meals added every week, so you're never stuck eating the same thing thinking, oh man, this is getting boring. So stop stressing about dinner. Right now, Freshly is offering listeners to the Athletic Hockey Show $40 off your first 2 orders when you go to freshly.com/hockey22. That's $40 off at freshly.com/hockey22. And we welcome you right back live to the Athletic Hockey Show Trade Deadline Extravaganza. Ian Mendes, Sean Gentille with you. And this is perfect. We're coming right out of that ad for Freshly. We're talking food. I'm telling you, I don't know how you missed this, Sean. But Peter Baugh, who does a terrific job covering the Colorado Avalanche, our guy's been taking some heat lately. He said wings, chicken wings are the most overrated food, I think, ever. He took a run. He took a sideswipe at sushi at one point. Let's bring him in and ask him, Peter Baugh, of all your hot takes with food in the last 6 weeks, what was the one tweet that angered people the most? Was it the chicken wings are the most overrated food? What was the thing that agitated people?
Well, the chicken wings, I tweeted that from Buffalo. The wind really got me. I was a little grumpy. So yeah, I mean, I think.
All right, wait. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Were you at a specific place in Buffalo, or were you just in the environment of Buffalo and thought
I was just in the environment, and I believe it. I mean, look, to quote the great philosopher Lizzo, truth hurts. And I think this is one of those situations. I just think that I don't think wings are bad. They're just more efficient, less messy, better tasting ways to eat chicken. And yeah, pineapple on pizza, Ian, was one that really got people going too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love it. Anyway, listen, you're a great follow on Twitter because I love the hockey, the media people that show some personality, and it's not just here are the line combinations for the Colorado Avalanche. And I love it. I love what you do. But let's listen. The reason why we brought you on was to talk hockey.
I mean, we don't have. Hold on a second. We don't have to talk hockey. We can keep it. We can keep it going.
No one told me to keep talking hockey.
I'm way more interested in talking about wings than the Avalanche's middle six or whatever we're going to talk about with Peter here. So I'll pretend that I'm interested in that.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Whatever.
Okay, but let's start there with Joe Sakic on deadline day. Obviously, I think there was a little bit of pressure on him to do something in the last 48 hours or so. How are Avalanche fans feeling? If there was a trade grade to be given to the Avs GM, what would it be?
Well, I put out a Twitter poll just to see what people were feeling, and I tweeted A through F, and I think the poll had I think most of the people were clicking B on the selection. So I think most people think he did a pretty good job. And I'd agree with them. I think we'll kind of see how it all plays out come playoff time. But I mean, if you look at, they solidified their bottom six with Lehkonen, and Nico Sturm and Andrew. Oh gosh, I'm blanking on his last name. He's played 1,200 NHL games. Yeah. Why can't I think of his name? It's been a long day.
Because he's 15 years older than you are, or whatever at this point.
That's true. Then they got Cogliana, and then they got Josh Manson, who's been really good in his first 2 games with the Avs. So they kind of had well-rounded trade deadline where they gave up a lot, but maybe not as much as they could have. They kept their 2023 first-round pick. They missed out on Claude Giroux, but it wasn't for a lack of trying. So I think that if you look at what they did, I think overall it was a pretty productive trade deadline for Joe Sakic.
Does Sakic get a B for just not being on Giroux's list? That's not his fault.
Yeah, I guess. See, like B to me is like, that's a good trade deadline. You did a good job. I mean, A is like you trade 2 seconds and get Devon Toews.
Yeah,
like, it's
that's
like
fair.
kind of like a fleecing. So I think a B is probably a fair grade. Like, it was a good job. He did about as well as could have been expected, but he didn't do anything, didn't make any. But then again, like Nico Sturm could win the Conn Smythe, and then it'll be an A in retrospect.
Is this what? Okay, so we'd heard for weeks that the Avs were kind of going to rejigger their bottom 6. Is this what it was? Is this what you were thinking when a month ago we were talking about moves that they're going to make? Is this extent getting Lehkonen and whoever else? I mean, that's a major overhaul.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at, they had Tyson Jost, who's been a pretty consistent presence in that bottom 6 for the last few years. They moved him out and brought in Nico Sturm, who's great on faceoffs, who's really good defensively and is bigger, has more physical frame, maybe less of an offensive ceiling than Jost, but like for what they need him to do is probably a better fit for this team. And then they brought in someone who can bring a lot to the third line. And I think that if you look at like the Avalanche, obviously the top line's been unbelievable for the last few years. The second line has been really good this year, but the third line is kind of where it's like, maybe you can have some more offense. And this gives you some flexibility of, you could have a line of Lehkonen, Newhook, Comfer, which is a really hard to play against, but offensively capable third line. And it allows you to move Logan O'Connor down to the fourth line. So I think it gives the Avs some flexibility. And I think it probably is exactly what, I mean, obviously adding a Claude Giroux would have been quite an upgrade like that. That's kind of a game changer, and they couldn't do that. So this was probably around the next best thing they could do. And they got a guy who has term and who they can have beyond this season.
You know, Peter, when you get into trade deadline time and you have pending unrestricted free agents, there's always the narrative from the fans and media. Either you got to trade this guy or you got to sign him. Nazem Kadri's having an unbelievable season. I think we all agree there's no way they could trade him because they've got legitimate Stanley Cup aspirations. But like, where do you see this going in the summertime? And is there any scenario in which you can see Nazem Kadri staying in Denver beyond this season?
Yeah, I think there's a definite scenario. I think it comes down to what he wants. It comes down to what him and his representation get the sense of is the market out there, which I think, I mean, realistically, there's going to be someone who's willing to pay a lot of money and probably more than is smart to play a guy on the older side of 30. Like someone will probably pony up and give Kadri a lot of money. But I think that all things considered, I think that if Sakic can negotiate with him in the window between when the playoffs end and when free agency begins, maybe they can get something done. I think it will be very difficult to keep the entire second line together of Nichushkin, Kadri, and Burakovsky. I don't know which ones leave or which ones stay, but that's 3 players having, I mean, I think career best scoring years, all of whom are unrestricted free agents and who have been excellent for the Avs. So I think there certainly is a sense of urgency of like, this team is not going to look the same next year. It's still going to be really good, but it's not going to have quite the same forward punch that it does this year.
Well, I'll tell you what, I got one more for you here because we're going to jump to Haley Salvian in a second. We're going to go from one first place team in the West to another. But before we do, I want to ask you this. Finishing in first is obviously the ideal scenario. But in the West, finishing in first this year, you might end up in a date with the Vegas Golden Knights. And I'm wondering, what would the feeling be in Colorado and in Denver, Peter, if round one, it's Vegas and the Avs?
I mean, I would enjoy it. It would be good for me. Good storylines, very fun. All for that. I think it would maybe bring back some nerves. I think the players are mature enough to know that it's a different team than last year, but maybe it's one of those things where if you go down 2-1, all of a sudden the like thoughts creep back in your head. But I think Vegas is a drastically different team than it was last year. I'm not saying better or worse. It's kind of like TBD, right? We don't know. But certainly they don't have the same forward depth, even if they have maybe more star power. We don't know if Mark Stone's back is going to cooperate and like what level he's going to be playing at. So I think Vegas has about as high a ceiling as any team in the NHL, but it also has as low a floor as, I mean, they could miss the playoffs this year. It's a weird situation. So I think that Colorado would probably be favored, and rightfully so. And I guess if they were to play them at any point, the first round is probably the time to catch them out, where they're maybe still like working some of this late season funk out of them. And maybe Robin Leonard is just coming off the injury rather than having some time to settle in. So it's definitely interesting that they could get their like arch nemesis in the first round, but that's all. It could be a lot of fun too.
Yeah. Well, listen, Peter, thanks for this. You just saw his Twitter handle there, Peter__ Baugh. Follow him for everything related to the Avs and for some hot food takes.
Oh,
as well.
And speaking of hot food takes, hot food, bad. Spicy food, not good. I'll leave you with that.
Goodbye, everybody. That's
Goodbye.
Peter Baugh.
The mic drop. Hey, listen, thanks for doing this. There he goes. He is the Avalanche beat reporter, Peter Baugh. Have a feeling that the Avs are going to go pretty deep into the playoffs. And hey, listen, they might end up meeting maybe in the conference final, the Calgary Flames. And I think we've got the usual Monday co-host of the Athletic Hockey Show. I think we've got her. She's in the airport because I can see the aeroplan sign over her left shoulder. It's Haley Salvian. There she is. Have you been mobbed at the airport? People saying, oh my gosh, I saw you on Trade Center. You were awesome.
Oh my God, sorry. It was so quiet. I thought I found a spot. Now, of course, there's like a flight announcement. No, I haven't been mobbed. I don't think anyone knows who I am. I changed into my comfy clothes, so we're good.
Oh, wait, that's what the announcement is actually. Everyone's saying there's a celebrity by Gate B7.
Yeah, I left
on TV
the
all day.
sticker. They put a TSN sticker on my laptop and I left it on. So I'm sitting here with the sticker like in the middle of the airport. I didn't find a quiet spot. I sat in the busiest area with my TSN sticker, hoping people would look at it and be like, hey, didn't I see you on TV, sir?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Hey,
Because
listen.
I love that. I love people talking to me.
Yeah, but hey, you did a great. I only saw one segment. You just knocked, like you did with the Olympics. You knocked it out of the park. You're just natural on television. It was great.
Ian, if you saw one segment, you don't know.
She could have flubbed the other ones. That's a
Okay,
watched-
I've got to say.
I watched all of them.
Yeah, that's nice. The first segment wasn't very good. I was actually kind of nervous. The final two segments weren't very good because my brain stopped working because it was 7 hours of television. And I was like, I think I blacked out for 4 hours. The middle was pretty good. The middle was the sweet spot. So hopefully that's what you saw, Ian.
I think it is. I think it is what I saw right in the middle. Okay, we just had Peter Baugh on. He talked about the Avalanche adding some pieces here. I know that Brad Treliving did some of his work ahead of the deadline, Haley, and especially in getting Tyler Toffoli. But you've written about hey, they got to be aggressive. This is the year. You don't know what's going to happen in the summertime. Now that the deadline is come and gone, how do you think people should look at the Calgary Flames as a legitimate contender in that Western Conference?
Well, I think they already were one. I think the Tyler Toffoli deal kind of solidified the Flames as one of the top contenders in the Western Conference. And, they're the team to beat in the Pacific Division right now. They're the second best team in the Western Conference right now. Who knows what adding Marc-Andre Fleury is going to do for the Minnesota Wild on paper. He is certainly better, than Cam Talbot. But, what's Fleury going to look like? He hasn't totally been himself this year. So we'll see. There's some teams who are trying to make it interesting, but right now it's the Avs who are above everybody. And then the Calgary Flames and the number 2 seed in the West. And I think, what they did at the deadline was just solidified their depth. I would consider this an aggressive trade deadline by general manager Brad Treliving, first with the Toffoli trade, and then adding Calle Järnkrok to the mix. He's somebody who, just with one piece gives them so much more flexibility. I think the Flames have struggled for most of the season with their secondary scoring. They had, the most productive line in the NHL for 3/4 of the year, but that was kind of their only line that was consistently clicking. And adding Toffoli and Järnkrok right away, Daryl Sutter was able to shake up those lines. He split up the best line in the league. And what he did was he put Tyler Toffoli on that top line to give that, Johnny Gaudreau and Elias Lindholm another guy who can score on the right side. And then he put Michael Backlund and Matthew Tkachuk back together and Dylan Dubé on that line there to give them some secondary scoring. I say that in quotes because it's Matthew Tkachuk, but that should be something that can help give Michael Backlund and Dylan Dubé a boost. And then you get Yarn Croak with Coleman and Mangiapane as your kind of shutdown line who can transition defense to offense. And so right there, the Flames are a much deeper team with more lines, at least on paper right now, who can be productive. And certainly those lines and those combinations worked out when they beat Vancouver on Saturday.
When did you learn that when did you realize that Kelly Yarncroke was going to be the perfect complement for that team? I'd like to know a date if possible, when you realized that he was the guy.
I don't know if I think I was kind of holding on hope. Like for me, I kind of thought like I went through different phases of the trade deadline. I think when I did my first trade board, I was like, oh, JT Miller's the best. Like, it's probably not going to happen, though. So, like, here's Andrew Kopp instead. And then as you kind of start working through the scenarios and realizing how expensive guys are, and then you start looking at someone like Kelly Yarncroke, who, is a very Flames, like Daryl Sutter type player. And you realize how good of a fit he can be. I don't know the exact date that I said that he was the guy. That's a weird question.
I mean, were you surprised to see that they were in on Hampus Lindholm and Mark Giordano by a lot of reports? Because those are big ticket guys to a group that I don't think needed messed with all that much.
Yeah, I think the concern with the D-core is that they're like one injury to the top four away from having a guy playing kind of out of his depth. We saw that last week with Oliver Shillington being out. He missed 2 games, and Michael Stone, who only played 5 games this season, got put into the top 4, and he was fine. But do you want to be in a playoff series against the Colorado Avalanche and have your 7th defenseman on your second pair? Probably not. So that was kind of probably why you saw the rumors of the Flames sniffing around in that sense. I don't know how much I would pay attention to the Geo stuff. I don't even really know. I didn't really see that. I didn't really hear that. I don't think that was like a realistic thing. There was no way that the Flames were going to be able to fit him under the cap unless they moved a body out who made a significant amount of money, because Geo makes over $6 million. So that would have been a tough one. I also don't want to call it hard feelings, but I also don't think that would be like a super, I don't know. I think, Dan Robson and I wrote a story about Mark Giordano back in December before he was supposed to make his return to Calgary, and then the whole schedule got messed up, and that didn't end up happening until last month. But, I think it was an emotional kind of take it personally thing about not getting protected in expansion. Like, Gio got it. He knows it's a business and he understood. But I don't know if that was something that, I don't know if that was a reunion that we were realistically going to see for, financial cap and like personal reasons.
All right, listen. What time is your flight here?
7:55.
7. And what boarding zone are you?
Don't answer that. Yeah, what gate are you at?
Are you at number 1 boarding zone here? I just need to know that.
Why?
How come the Kelly Yarncroke awkward question got answered, but not this one? I just want what boarding zone.
What are you angling at here?
I just want to know what boarding zone are you, and then I got a final question before we let you go.
I know the answer to this.
You are zone 1. Nice. Well, good for you.
Is there something ahead of zone 1? Zone A1?
No, I don't think so.
Possibly.
I don't think so. Zone 1. Okay. I want you to answer this question for me. Now is a real question.
I can't hear anything.
If the Calgary Flames win the Stanley Cup this spring, is it more likely that Johnny Gaudreau comes back, or less likely? Like, if you were looking at this and saying, what's the thing that could bring him back? Is it winning a cup, or coming really close and not winning a cup?
She definitely can't hear any of your questions.
I can't hear anything.
Yeah. Did you hear that, Gentille?
I did.
Okay. So
was it a good question?
Yeah, it was fantastic. It wasn't about your boarding zone. Now, do you hear me now?
One sec, guys.
Let's see. One more time. Let's see if Haley can.
Is it more likely that Gaudreau comes back if the Flames win?
Oh, we just cut her off, or she just jumped out of the chat.
Good enough. It's okay. It's understandable.
That's that. Okay. Well, okay. Let me ask you that question. What do you think? Like, Johnny Gaudreau, you're always going to hear people in Philly or Jersey and that neck of the woods saying, "Oh, Johnny Gaudreau's coming back." Oh no, here we go. We got her back.
I don't know what happened.
All good. Okay, so
I
answer
took
that question if you can. What's more likely, if they win the cup, he comes back, or if they come really close to winning the cup and just don't quite get it done?
I think it's kind of the same situation, honestly. I think the question is if they lose in the first round versus they make a deep playoff run. I think realistically you're looking at a Flames team who should make the Western Conference final. If they don't, that would mean they were upset by somebody who hasn't been as good as them all season. Whether that's in the first round, looking at, I guess it depends on how the wild card ends up being. Like, they should not have a problem with the Vegas Golden Knights. That team has been decimated by injury and they've been a disaster. Sorry, Lazarus is saying that I'm hogging all the time. I guess he really wants to come in and chat about what did Chicago even do? I don't know.
Fleury.
Oh, right.
He can take my place. That's fine. If he wants to tag in, let's
go.
go.
If Laz really wants this much airtime,
I'm ready to go to sleep.
Host the damn show.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not even his story. Fleury's not his story. That's for Russo to do, and he probably already wrote 10,000 words about it. But no, I think for Johnny, it's a lot more complicated than just can the Flames make a deep playoff run. It's can the Flames show Johnny that there's a legitimate future in Calgary? And that has a ripple effect with players like Matthew Tkachuk as well, who has a ton of, control over what happens with his next contract. He's only 1 year away from UFA status. He's a restricted free agent with arbitration rights this summer. So that's a big thing. And if you sign Johnny Gaudreau to what he realistically earned based on the Hart Trophy-like season that he is having, then how much money do you have left over to sign Matthew Tkachuk and sign Mangiapane and sign Oliver Shillington? So I don't think it's as simple as like, if the Flames can make a deep playoff run, is Johnny Gaudreau going to stay? I think it's what happens with Johnny and then what happens with everyone else. But I think there's, but then if Johnny leaves, does Matthew Tkachuk see a realistic future in Calgary? I think it's going to be a really interesting offseason for the Calgary Flames. And I think what they can show they can do in the postseason is probably going to be an important piece of that. They have not been able to get through the first round of the playoffs in the last 6 years. That happens again. I feel like there's probably I think Johnny Gaudreau, I believe Johnny Gaudreau when he says he wants to stay in Calgary. I really do. But I always do wonder what guys think when your team consistently can't get it done. Are you going to look for an opportunity somewhere else? Potentially. Is that Johnny? Is that Matthew? I don't know, but it's going to be a really interesting summer for the Flames.
All right, listen, we better leave it there because she's a Zone 1 boarding person, and you never know. They might be calling your name.
I've got to try to write a story before I board, too. And I'm trying to be nice and squeeze you into my schedule.
Yeah. Look at your face, just full of disdain. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, listen, safe travels. Again, great work on TSN today. We look forward. Next Monday, it's you and I. We're back in the saddle for the Monday podcast. All right?
All right.
Oh,
okay.
Right. Oh, man, that sucks.
I'll get Sean to co-host next week.
There you go. Kidding. All right, there she goes.
Guys.
Haley Salvian, terrific writer out of Calgary, did some great work on TSN. And now we've had Mark Lazarus on standby. So let's bring him in. Let's bring him right in. There we go. He does a wonderful job covering the Chicago Blackhawks. I think is he on mute though? That's the question.
He's not on mute. I think he might be on is he on a swing set or something? Is that in the backyard? What are we looking at?
I'm on my patio.
There we go.
I'm however many minutes this segment is away from my first PTO since May. So it's the nicest day of the year. I've been stuck inside all day. I'm going to enjoy myself.
I mean, that sounds like a challenge. Just keep you on as long as we possibly can.
Ian, for your benefit, I am United Platinum, which makes me Zone 1. And I am Marriott Lifetime Titanium, which means I'm basically a god.
All right, hold on a second. If anybody who works for this company mentions Marriott points or like flight
Angel
mile
gets his
status, do you have like a personal kind of signal that's sent to your phone that lets you know that people are talking about us, so you can just tag in and talk about it too?
Yeah. You ever see that when we get into a war, we start screenshotting how many nights we've stayed in our lives, and then someone like Amelie Benjamin, who used to be a baseball writer, just like puts us all in our place.
Baseball writers, baby.
man.
That's half the perk of the gig.
Exactly. 81 nights on the road. All right. Hey, Laz, thanks for doing this. Kyle Dubas made some comments that certainly drew a lot of attention north of the border, in which he said, I'm really disappointed that all the Marc-Andre Fleury stuff came out, and he kind of pointed the finger at Chicago general manager Kyle Davidson. So I'm curious, what was Chicago's general manager? What was Kyle's reaction to that? And are we going to have to rent a barn here? Remember boys with Brian Burke back in the day, Kevin Lowe? Let's get some GMs to throw down. Like, what's the temperature at here right now between these two guys?
Yeah, Kyle versus Kyle, 30-something GM versus 30-something GM. Let's do it. I asked Davidson about it, and he said, he's aware of the comments, and he's going to take care of that in private, which, of course, everyone on Twitter went, well, why didn't he keep the Fleury stuff private? We don't know that stuff came from Dubas. I mean, we've all been in this business long enough to know that leaks come from anywhere and everywhere. But it was interesting. Like, Kyle Davidson's the new guy in town, and, he went kind of eyeball to eyeball with Bill Guerin on the Fleury thing. And, now he's got Kyle Dubas calling him out. This is not stuff you normally see. And here's the 33-year-old general manager of the Blackhawks taking some heat. So it's kind of fun to watch. Let's, it's such a cordial old boys network. Let's have a little friction. Let's make a little pro wrestling out of this.
I mean, that's like you said, it's a 37-year-old versus a 34-year-old or whatever. We need new blood.
Right.
Can only drag Berkey into this for so long. Come on.
Yeah, we need some fresh hatred, not the old 1970s hatred that nobody even knows about or remembers, but people just hate just because they think they're supposed to. Let's get some new blood in here.
Yeah, hey, you know what? But listen, as much as we want to talk Chicago with you, there is a winners and losers that you helped put together with the Athletic, and I think this is a great way for us to end this live show is by us talking about some winners and losers here, lads. So let's get to it. If you were to pick the biggest winner or two out of the trade deadline of this period, who you got?
It's the Sunshine State. You got both the Panthers and the Lightning just saying the hell with it. We're going for it this year. And that's what you want to see. I mean, I'm in Chicago, so I know all too well that you'll pay for this down the road. Like Julian Breezebaugh, his chickens will come home to roost sometime in the future. But who cares if he's got 3 consecutive Stanley Cup banners hanging from Amalie Arena? That's what you want to see from your GM. You want to see them go for it. Some poor Sharks fans in the comments going, but what if you always go for it and you never win? Well, that's when it's really bad. But that's what you want as a fan, right? You want your team to go for it. In Tampa and Florida, one of them is not getting out of the second round. One of them might not even get out of the first round the way that division is set up, but they're both going for it. So who cares about the first round picks? Who cares about the 2025 third rounder conditional? Who cares? Go get Claude Giroux. Go get Brandon Hagel. Go get Ben Sherratt. Let's do something. Let's try to win a Stanley Cup here. And that's what you want to see.
If you go for it every year and don't win, you sign those guys for 8 years and like $64 million, right? All of them. Just take all those players and sign them for almost a decade.
I want to feel bad for Sharks fans, but San Jose is gorgeous. I know it's like $1 million for a cardboard box, but I don't feel that bad for him.
I do. Have you seen Marc-Edouard Vlasic's contract? I feel terrible for them.
Marc-Edouard Vlasic, his cousin, just made his NHL debut with the Blackhawks. Oh, Alex Vlasic. It's hockey. You're always related to a former NHLer. Every single player that's ever
Does he have a hyphenated name too, or is it just Alex?
It's just Alex Vlasic, and he's from Wilmette, Illinois, the north suburbs of Chicago. He's about 9 feet tall. He was a second-round pick a few years ago.
I hope he looks forward to his 15-year contract with the San Jose Sharks at some point down the line.
It's the Blackhawks, so it'll have a full no-movement clause.
Wanted to pick your brain a little bit too about now. Let's go the opposite end of the spectrum, Laz, and talk about some of the losers. And I know that you put Philly in there. I think you had Ottawa in there, Edmonton. Maybe you can walk us through the teams that you thought maybe came out behind here around the trade deadline.
Well, you tell me. You're Ottawa, man. What was the Travis Hamonic trade? What is that? Why is that? What the hell happened there?
We brought it up in every segment. Every 5 minutes, we have to reset and talk about the Hamonic deal.
Okay. One of the great things about doing the Athletic Hockey Show is I can talk about other teams, and it's a national show, and it's my window to escape this. And now you guys are trying to drag me back.
Fair enough. As the Chicago guy, I fully understand that and empathize with you.
Exactly.
Philly, you feel bad for it because Philly didn't do anything wrong, right? Philly had no choice. Philly had no options. Claude Giroux would just go to one team, and they did okay. They didn't get what you should get for a player of Giroux's caliber. But, it's just got to be – it's so disheartening when, to be a fan of that team and to know how little hope you have in the near future and have your one big trade chip really not amount to too much. I mean, it's the Blackhawks with Marc-Andre Fleury was similar in that there was one team he would go to. They did well enough to get a conditional second rounder that might long shot become a first rounder. That sometimes that's all you can do is get whatever you can, and you just have to grin and bear it. And that's the unfortunate reality of no trade clauses and rental players, and you're only worth what the market allows.
I thought Chuck Fletcher said they were close. What are you talking about? The Flyers are right there.
Right there. The Flyers are always right there. Every team is always just one hot week away from winning the Stanley Cup.
And did you guys find it a little odd? Like, did you guys find St. Louis like eerily quiet?
Yeah,
around the trade deadline.
Yeah, I mean, this in the Central Division alone, you had Colorado was loading up, Minnesota's obviously loading up, and St. Louis went and got Nick Leddy. Nick Leddy for a lot. Yeah, they gave up a lot. Nick Leddy is, I mean, he's a great skater. He's only 31, which is mind blowing to me because I thought he was like 78 years old at this point. Mm-hmm. He's 31. He's got a lot of life left, but he's clearly declining. He's a great skater and puck mover, but he's not a good defenseman, which is kind of what St. Louis needs more than anything else. So, I mean, right here in Chicago, Calvin DeHaan was right there. You could have had him for a 3rd or 4th round pick. Kyle Davidson was just trying to get rid of him, and that's a useful defensive player who could play a number 3, number 4 role for you. So there's a lot of curious decisions, a lot of guys left on the table that shouldn't have been left on the table for some of these contending teams. Like, what are you doing if you're not trying to win, right? Are you just trying to be okay? Is that what we're doing now?
I think so. As far as like the Blues are the Blues are fascinating too, because everyone that they got linked to Sherratt and they got linked to some of the bigger defensive names on the market, and they're capped out. They have no money to spend. It would have to be dollar in, dollar out. So if you want to add like a $6 million defenseman, like good luck finding. You're robbing Peter to pay Paul if you're St. Louis. So yeah, I wasn't surprised to see them kind of play.
Not surprised, but it's if you're a Blues fan, you got to be disappointed in that because it's normal. Everyone's looking at Colorado and to a lesser extent Calgary, and you're like, well, how are we supposed to compete with that when they're adding good players and we're not, and we're already behind them? I mean, maybe Darryl Sutter was right. Like, just why even bother trying against Colorado?
Hey, Laz, before we let you go, and again, we want to encourage our listeners to and viewers here to check out your winners and losers of the trade deadline that you put up at the Athletic. You had a great tweet today. You don't have to tell us the whole story, but you were like, damn, Marc-Andre Fleury got traded, and it killed a great story. So, look, you don't have to tell us the whole idea, but maybe you could strongly hint.
No, I can, because it's not going to happen now. Look.
That is like perfectly timed.
Was covering the Penguins for a suburban paper in Pittsburgh.
Okay, now he's back. He's back.
I covered. I know that'll get Gentille back into the discussion. I covered Marc-Andre Fleury as a rookie under Coach Eddie Olczyk. So my idea was that team was just absolutely horrible. And Eddie Olczyk was all about the idea, but we just couldn't make the logistics work, was to just have the three of us sitting in a room talking about the 2003 Penguins, the X generation, right there, right, Sean? And just shitting all over that team. It would have been amazing.
I would, if you wouldn't have tagged me in on that, I would have been so upset because that was my senior year of high school. And I think I went to probably 30 or 35 Penguins games that year because tickets were just laying on the ground. So, oh my gosh, that's
I just thought it was funny that the three of us were all, around the Blackhawks organization at the time.
Yeah, I know.
I covered Coach Eddie Olczyk. That was amazing. And 19-year-old Marc-Andre Fleury, when I was 23, 22, it would have been amazing. And I never got to do it. And it makes me sad.
And Ramsey Abid and Lassie Kriata and all those guys.
I was a big Alexei Morozov guy. I really thought he was the best player outside of North America, right?
Hold up.
I got so many bobbleheads from that team. Oh, Dick Turnstile? Yeah,
Dick Turnstile was there, right?
Yeah, Dick Turnstile.
You mean, wait a second. You mean leading scorer Dick Turnstrom? Put some respect on his name. What are you talking about?
He was amazing.
Bobby Ornstrom?
Was that the year that Andrew Ference was a rookie? He was the best quote on the team. I was going to that guy all the time.
Oh, amazing.
This is now a podcast about the 2003 Pittsburgh Penguins, by the way.
I'm willing to stick around for that one.
That would be gold. See, but those are the fun ideas for the summertime, right? When we're betting around, like you tweeted out as well today. I think it was today, where you're like, every writer just wants to get past the deadline. Then you get past the deadline. You're like, there's nothing to write about, right?
I'll I did an interview with Marcus Kruger, who has not been in the NHL for 3 years now, at 1 p.m. Central Time today. So I'm working. I'm trying to come up with stuff that's going to be for down the road. But yeah, that's how far I'm reaching.
Okay.
Olympian Marcus Kruger.
That's right.
Awesome stuff. Hey, listen, Laz, thanks for doing this. Again, we encourage our viewers to check out your winners and losers of the trade deadline, available right now on the Athletic site. Thanks for doing this, and we'll get you again down the road.
Thanks, guys.
All right, there goes Mark Lazarus. See, you know when people say, and we're about to wrap this up, and people are like, oh, man, Ian has a really generic broadcasting voice. Does Mark Lazarus not have one of the best broadcasting voices out there?
It makes sense that like his podcast does as well. He's got the side gig with NHL Network and whatever. That dude, the first time I met him, that was like my first thought was like, how are you not a radio guy? Did you know this? Laz, big time Broadway guy, big time musical theater guy, loves to sing, very, very into it.
Okay, this is information we could have used 90 seconds ago. He could have sang us right out of the show.
Are you kidding me? Like that? Like you're talking about off-season content? That's like that's a June show all by itself, right?
You know what?
We just have Mark. We just have Mark come on and do selections from Les Mis or whatever.
You know what? A fun column would be, again, it would be very like inside baseball, and maybe only we would enjoy it. But like the hidden talent of every writer who works for the Athletic. Like everyone's got something quirky or weird or something, right, that they can do.
Nope. One trick pony, baby. I don't even know what I would do for a job. I'd end up being a bartender or something. I got nothing else to offer.
Can you juggle? I can juggle. That's about the only thing.
I specifically cannot juggle. I've tried to learn how and cannot.
There you go. All right. I think we'll leave it there. We'll leave it there with us talking about how untalented we are. But we had a great collection of talented guests here, right? Jonas Siegel and Peter Baugh and Haley and Mark Lazarus and Arthur Staple and Bill Lindsay, and I'm just going off the top of my head. Is that everybody? Mm-hmm. I think that's everybody.
Peter, Laz.
Oh, and Corey Pronman. Corey Pronman in the leadoff spot.
Come on. I talked to Corey.
Corey Pronman can juggle. I can't picture him juggling.
It wouldn't surprise me if he could. I've talked to Corey so much over the last 3 days that he just flew out of my head. I've talked to him more than anybody else in my life over the last 48 hours.
Yeah, no, he's always got the goods on all those prospects and stuff. Hey, listen, this was 90 minutes well spent. I think for us, had a lot of fun. Appreciate all the people dropping in the comments section. I like Anthony saying, "Hey, the Athletic is stacked. It needs a nickname like how California got Death Valley."
Buddy, you misread that. He's saying the Atlantic is stacked. He's talking about the Atlantic Division, not the publication for which we work.
Oh my God, do I have egg on my face?
We are much less impressive than the
Oh my God, that's hilarious. Because you know what? There was back-to-back texts from him. And see, the second one does say the Athletic.
There we go. That's very nice. Thank you.
That's what I was looking at. So we're not Death Valley.
Anthony, you're welcome.
Yeah, Anthony, this was a ton of fun. And Sean, this was, and so maybe I'll let you tee this up. Athletic Hockey Show Tuesday edition with you and Custance. What do you got going on the Tuesday edition of the pod?
I think it's all Pierre all the time. I'm pretty sure that's it. We're gonna have LeBron. We're gonna have LeBron in for the duration. I'm just really happy and really honored that he found the time in his schedule and carved some out for us. It's a big get.
Good stuff. And maybe he can give us he may give you some background on what Haley Salvian was really like behind the scenes there. Zone 1. I can't believe she got Zone 1 on the board. Good for her.
Big hitter, baby.
Yeah. All right. Hey, listen, we'll leave it there. We want to thank everybody for dropping by, tuning in. If you did the whole 90 minutes or just a few minutes, we certainly appreciated that. Like I said, coming up on Tuesday, we're back to the original audio version of the podcast. It's a Gentille and Custance. And like you said, Pierre LeBrun will drop by. That does it for us. We want to thank you for watching this live edition of the Athletic Hockey Show Trade Deadline Edition.